CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Binaifer. I think we can now move to the panel, but I just want to make sure that while the speakers are being mic'd, if they have not been mic'd, I use this opening to advertise. So as you know, we're a university, we're a business school. We offer courses on philanthropy, starting from short courses, and our executive education boss is here, Leonie. We offer 2-day masterclasses to certificates, but we also offer postgraduate diploma, masters, and PhDs. And so if you're interested in studying with us, we are here to assist. So let me take this opportunity to introduce Nicolette Naylor, who is the founder and CEO of Ubuntu Philanthropy. Nicolette has 16 years of experience working in philanthropy, human rights. She has more than 2 decades working at the intersection of justice, philanthropy, and Pan-African feminist struggles. Nicolette is going to now guide us and moderate the conversation that is going to take place here on the podium. So Nicolette and panelists, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Is this working now? Wonderful to see everyone here, and thank you, Binaifer, for those powerful remarks. I'd like to welcome onto the stage with us right now. This is a powerhouse panel. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. Machel, Graça Machel, who needs no introduction as a phenomenal, she's told me not to do this. A phenomenal leader, African stateswoman leader, inspiring the continent. Decades-long work in the area of justice and improving the lives of women and children globally and on the continent. So, Machel, thank you so much for being with us today and for being such an inspiration to me as well. It's good to be with you. Dr. Naledi Pandor is joining us on stage as well. Like Machel, Dr. Pandor needs little introduction as the chair of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, but also the former minister up until June 2024, former Minister of International Relations in South Africa, also former Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology. I think there's a lot that I'm probably going to miss out. But a member of Parliament since 1994, and really honored to be with you here today, Dr. Pandor. So maybe to kick us off, I think we've heard some powerful remarks from Binaifer. Maybe Machel, 1 or 2 things that just came up for you as you were listening to Binaifer's remarks in terms of where we are at this point in time.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I thought I was going to say what I had picked up from Binaifer's speech. I think it was good to hear you saying that philanthropy has been top-down. I think that's an issue I would like to develop while we have our conversation, because it defines the essence of how we have been failing. I was also very happy to hear you saying every African is a philanthropist. Because that defines the difference of what it is, the formal philanthropy, and the philanthropy we practice as Africans in our everyday life. But I was also happy to hear you saying it's time of shifting the power dynamics. It's just one of those aspects which tells us we recognize that we cannot continue to do things the way we have been doing. And for me, it's not only to listen. It's not only to listen. It is really to give the power of deciding the relationships which we want to develop from the global south with the global north. And when it comes to philanthropy, I hope we'll have time to debate what it means to be partners for social justice, but being partners. I'm just picking up some of the issues which struck me in this changing world in which we are, and I'm hoping really our time will allow us, to develop this much more.
Thank you so much, Ms. Machel. I think we will be going into that conversation. Dr. Pandor, one or two things that struck you during the opening remarks by Binaifer?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me to be here. I think the first thing I would want to say is that while indeed I acknowledge that we do make contributions in community, in family, and in COVID-19 in nation, the context that we're confronting today is a highly complex, toxic, and difficult environment. And we should not undermine the challenge that confronts us. So what we need is much more of a global approach. We've got to really look broader than community and individual and look at how national or continental we can build the ability to support ourselves. The words of Steve Biko have come true. Black man, you're on your own.
Yes.
And I believe that what this moment requires is for us to recognize that we have to begin in very large terms to do for ourselves. This moment is a test for the South, for the global South. And if we do not woman up, I don't want to say man up, if we don't woman up, we're going to fail the moment. And these moments don't occur all the time. They occur in an epoch, in an era, and then you miss the opportunity. So the test is, do we have the mettle to do the large that is required? Two things I took away. Firstly, that the aid that's gone won't come back. And that now we've got to look at what are the alternatives. And I really agreed with the speaker with respect to the need for us to consider new and innovative approaches to philanthropy. I do think we need to be engaged much more in thinking through those strategic approaches that she made reference to. I think this is urgently necessary. Then I also believe that one of the things we must look at is how do we persuade likely philanthropists on the African continent to give in a more strategic, larger, and more institutional fashion, such as in the Open Society Foundation model. Perhaps different in orientation, but large in measure. We have to develop those kinds of institutions if we are to act for ourselves. Those were the two really that I thought for me were really important. The third is I would have loved to know what Open Society Foundation intends to do in this new age. But maybe we can get that later.
Thank you, Doctor. Maybe we can pivot to you, Binaifer. I think you spoke powerfully about the brokenness of the system. And when we speak about the brokenness of the aid system, we've seen as a continent with HIV/AIDS, with COVID-19, we're on our own. We're always left out on our own. And so this moment requires us to think differently. But it's not only the aid systems that are broken. And I think I don't want us to get into blaming governments for being too dependent on aid. The system is broken at both ends. And just like a government can overnight decide to cut aid, we often see a new president arriving in a foundation and changing strategy and exiting from a field. How do we actually grapple with this brokenness in the system where when a president of a country or a president of a foundation shifts course, organizations die? Some reflections.
So let me start, because I think philanthropy has a different role than government in that philanthropy is not intended to be in perpetuity. It is not to replace government and to take the role of government. It is intended to be a catalyst, to provide innovation, to help get ideas over the hump until they can take life themselves. So in that regard, you in fact don't want philanthropy to be doing the same thing 50, 60 years later. In fact, that's actually not its role. What are we doing? Let me take Africa. So we are looking very heavily at the fact that the global economic architecture is broken. 3.3 billion people in the world living in countries that pay more to service their debt than on health or education. They can't get out of the debt trap, even if they wanted to. And as a result, their citizens are getting poorer and poorer as a result of the widening inequality. And the youth, for the first time, are seeing a dark future for themselves. And that energy and frustration has to be harnessed in a positive way. We're doing 3 planks in Africa, 4 maybe we would say. So one is, when you look at the continent of Africa, which is different from some other regions, you see the fraying of the social contract between the citizen and the government more and more. And that's a broken relationship. And it's creating instability politically. It's creating volatility in ways that are not healthy for societies across the continent. And so we're investing in the idea of democratic resilience in terms of trying to help to repair that in some way, but particularly with a focus on the youth in terms of not just harnessing that energy and that imagination, but also helping with skill sets and other things to assist them to become the leaders of tomorrow. By 2050, 1 in every 4 people on this planet is going to be African. So that's very key. The second issue that we're looking at is the issue of this volatility is taking us backwards. We are seeing civilian coups, military coups, conflicts in ways that we thought actually we were getting out of. We're actually receding. And so managing that volatility in ways that we look at conflict and try and think about ways that in conflict situations, how can we move beyond just a ceasefire and a peace to think about transformative futures out of conflict. And the last thing that we're thinking about, as I said, is how do we help to build economic prosperity in some ways. Government departments over the years, and this is not just in Africa, have been hollowed out by World Bank and IMF structural adjustment programs. Governments don't have the capacity any longer to actually innovate, analyze, research, think. And so what we're trying to do at Open Society Foundations is help governments that would like to think of a different way of doing their economic policies and their industrial policies to have access to economists who are thinking differently from the Global South and elsewhere, to assist them to actually think through how do they move not just economically, but also how do they move to green energy. In Africa in particular, we are focusing on the critical mineral sector. If Africa can manage its critical minerals sector positively, it can leapfrog into a prosperous continent. And actually, many of these small miners are actually women. And how can we help support them, and how can we build up government capacity so that when the Trumps of the world come to take your critical minerals, actually governments and this mining sector itself is well placed to actually negotiate the best deal possible that will actually bring benefits to Africa. So that gives you a sense of the new kind of ways that we are thinking.
Thank you. Thank you. Machel, maybe I can turn to you in terms of some of the issues that you were wanting to double click on in terms of what we heard. We've been hearing about a new vision for philanthropy, something that's truly transformative. And Binaifer shared about listening more and what that could look like. From your own perspective, what do you think we need to be thinking about to be truly transformative and out of the box and move from a dependence model to more of an independence model on the continent?
I think we should change the way we define programs. And I didn't say projects deliberately. I say programs. What we are being offered is the one who gives the money has already an agenda. And come and say, this is my agenda. And even the way this money has to be, managed and to be taken to the last person who should benefit from the whole, process is already, defined. And our civil society organizations here, they just have to confirm. And sometimes they are forced to change the way they would like to do things to adjust to what the donor, because this is the donor is offering. I would like to see a change in the way really we agree on a program to allow us as Africans to define, one, our priorities, second, the way we would like to respect the context, the social cultural context in which we live, and to be able then to build partnership. And partnership means that every side gives to what is going to be agreed. And this changes the way things are operating, as I was saying. So programs should be result from a common interaction and a common taking and give of the two partners. So as we operate, we are not partners. We are grantees, and we are recipients. And we need to change this kind of relationship for me. The second thing I'd like to see changing is, you are given in a program that it's expected to last only three years. But it's a social cultural environment which is so complex. I can't complete a program in 3 years. I need a little bit more time to consolidate the program. But many times it's 3 years and then it's over. I think we need to agree on programs which can be 3 years plus 3 years plus 3 years. But I know, and the community we are working knows that this program is able to take us step by step to a level where the communities then they can own it. But they can't do it in 3 years. So that has to change. The programs, I'm saying programs, not projects, and it has a difference, but the programs, they should be at least, if you are saying 3 plus 3 plus 3, you understand that I'm taking you to 10 years, right? That's what a partner, in my view, is to be. And so I'm not a grantee, I'm a partner. And I have the opportunity to engage the members of the community, to make them own the program. In 10 years' time, if the program is well done, they will have had got the seeds of working from themselves. So this is one. The other thing which I would like to see changing is to support organizations themselves. You know, our partners, they say, oh, no, this money is just for program. It's not for institutional building. And we always struggle because, yes, we feel we are being just vehicles of getting the resources and implement, and that, but we do not have the ability to stand on our own. So I would like to appeal that in this partnership, part of the resources is to build the capacity of organizations themselves. So in this at least 10 years I'm talking about, they can, not only the communities, the organizations themselves, they can stand on their own. Suppose now, I don't know how many organizations are here are receiving money from USAID. And we were told that the USAID from now on, there's not, if you don't have your own capacity, it's not only unemployment which is coming with those who are managing the program, it's the institution itself which cannot sustain itself. So sustainability of institutions should be part of this partnership to allow organizations to work on their own and also to give the opportunity of our partnership with the communities to be grounded enough so that even if the funding doesn't come, but communities can work on their own and organizations also can sustain themselves. I'd like to say this.
Thank you, Machel. I was speaking to a US foundation that's wrapping up its work now in around the world. And they were saying as part of their final grants, they are not attaching time to it. No proposal is being written.
Okay.
So if you need to save the money or invest the money or grow the money or grow your reserves, they're allowing their partners to do that. And they're saying, don't write a proposal, no report requirements, because we're leaving, we're closing our doors. And my question was, if you've been investing in a different way for the last 10 years, and if we'd always thought about sustainability, and they're saying, well, we want organizations to be able to invest this money. So we all have this thing where you have a proposal and a report and spend down the money. I need a nil balance at the end of 1 year or at the end of 2 years, a nil balance versus invest some of this money. It's more of an investment model so that you can strengthen your institution for the rainy days. That's a different way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
But we are stuck in the 2-year cycle, 3-year cycle, and we often say, well, transformative philanthropy is core funding and flexible funding and long-term funding. So instead of 1 or 2 years, let's do 3 years or 5 years. And let's do core funding. But is that really transformative in terms of creating sustainability? How, Binaifer, maybe how can you, how are you thinking about sustainability and this independence that we'd like to see from civil society?
So we've done a lot of things. We just went through a major restructuring, and we did a lot of thinking about how we remove some of these structural obstacles. The first thing is our own staff worked on 1-year budgets. which meant that they could only give 1 to 2 year budgets maximum to spread out the money. And so we've removed that. What we are giving is, we are looking at a body of work and we're saying, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years, what are you going to do? Here's your budget. We have made allocations over the next decade in the amount of $2 billion that allows for our staff now to give a 7-year grant or an 8-year grant, and to do that for the anchor grantees. We've also, it used to be that our review process you could be getting a grant for 15 years from Open Society, but you'd go through the same process each time. We've removed that for low risk and renewals. We fast-track those now, so there's less compliance. You have to hand in less. We've simplified the grant application. It's much more simple. People can, and we've put it on a system now, people can hand in their proposal in an easy way. We're allowing for whichever languages make sense for people. And we're also doing something new and different, which is, instead of having programs where we have a health program or a media program, we're saying, who in this landscape is a key partner, is somebody who's an anchor, who's really doing good, and they don't fit into anything, but the work is good. We're going to provide them with long-term support. It used to be at Open Society, when we said long-term support, we give it to our core partners, we meant core partners in the Global North. We never, ever gave a long-term core partner grant in the Global South. We are changing that now. We have a department now that is giving long-term support across the globe, and we've never done that before. So the other thing is, we're also trying to move as much as possible to general support, and we've always allowed people to use the funds to keep their lights on and, et cetera. So those are some of the structural things that we're thinking about, that we've tried to shift and change. And I think it will be interesting to see whether that makes a difference, because I think that if you can only see 1 year ahead, you really can't plan in a way that takes you more than a year. And so you resort to project-related, and it's exactly what you said. You scale down, and when you report back, you say, we had these many meetings, we had these many convenings, we spent this much on refreshments, et cetera. As opposed to getting an 8-year grant, you say, okay, what can I do with 8 years? Now I can really think. And I think it's not just for recipients of the grants, it's also for our own staff inside the philanthropy who are being asked to think in a different way at the outset about what the long-term impact is, and to think about what goals there are. So these are some of the things. I also think there's an attitude issue. You have to acknowledge, when you are a worker in philanthropy, that there is a power dynamic you come to the table with. It's not an equal relationship, and it shouldn't pretend that it's an equal relationship. And I think that is also an important part of being a good philanthropist, is understanding your own, the imbalance of power at the table.
Yes.
Perhaps I could come in. You said we could come in. One of the things I would like to see changing in the building exactly of the relationship is to make it clear what I, as an African, I'm going to gain from this program, and I'm insisting in 10 years at least, and if they can be renewed at 10, it's even better. But also for me to see what my partner, who is from the North, it is true he's coming from money, he's coming with money, which I do not have money. But what am I giving to this relationship? It doesn't come clear that in this relationship there is something which we as Africans, we are giving in that relationship. It just comes clear that we receive, and we become receivers all the time. So you can't talk of social justice in this way. You can say that this organization will support communities to build the seeds of social justice. So social justice will happen if the program is properly run at that level. But we will not build the social justice between me, who I am the organization, who is working with an organization in the North. Am I making myself clear? I'm still even changing the way I'm sitting. It is to say social justice has to be sort of in this, let me call it horizontal, level. But I want to see social justice also between me as an African and Soros, who is giving money from where he is. So that relationship, in shifting, power,
Yes.
I would like us to really be very explicit and to make sure that the North has been gaining from even if it's just our thinking, the way we do things, which is different, it changes them as well. So they do not sit there and we play the game of the money only. And then say social justice has to happen amongst you, Africans, Latin Americans, Asians, but there's no social justice between us, the global South as it is called, the global South with the global North.
But
I would like us really to begin to think of these things as a civil society organization, because then, yes, government relationship, it has also to change. And it has to bring us to the level where I know that although we are not developed in technology and we need a lot of investment, but the relationship between, our governments and even with our business people, it's not our conversation today, it is, but I just wanted at the level of a civil society organization,
you can't
because we are
imagine that power
building.
relations are different
Yeah.
when you remain a recipient.
Yes, exactly.
So I think firstly, let's get things clear. What we need to do is build the institutional capacity to do for ourselves.
That's what I was
So
trying
I
to
think
say.
that's absolutely vital.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you. Thank you, my daughter. Thank you, my daughter. You made it clear. That's what I was saying. My first comment, it was to say, I heard you saying it is top down. When it's top down, I just come and I dictate my way of doing things. And then I come with the money. And we have ideas, we have our aspirations, but we also have our way of living. Our social cultural, it is a sort of wealth which we are giving to the world. And this is not taken into account. So the relationships between, civil society organizations and from north to south has to change dramatically to be that one which is building a relationship of equal. And the definition of equal, it's not based in money. Because the problem is we become slaves of money. Because I have the money, I give, I have the power. Because we are human and we are building a relationship of human people, the beginning of changing is to say, when we sign a contract, to say, buddy, I'm giving you this. What are you going to receive from the South? And to begin to think of that. And it might not be measurable, as money, but there is a lot which we are giving them. So I think we need to change this. Otherwise, because I'm taking too long, I'm not going to speak more. But because we are seeking social justice, there is a need to build social justice between the two in philanthropy. It's not only social justice for us down here. Am I making myself clear? Perhaps I should speak in Shangaan.
Thank you, Machel. I want to come to Dr. Pandor, who was coming in around this issue around we always centering the global north and we centering philanthropy. What does this shifting power relationships look like, and what does it look like to think completely differently around that relationship? We've got a challenge here from Machel, and I thought you were taking it even further.
Well, I think we're missing some things that we should talk about. Firstly, as I said, we have to be our own mistresses.
Yes.
That's very important. And that means we treat our giving differently. Because this thing of looking at others giving us is a problem. So we've got to encourage ourselves to contribute to philanthropy as Africans. It's very important. And if you look at countries in the north, individuals of very modest means give toward philanthropy. We don't sufficiently. So we need an organized mechanism. The ecosystem that you were referring to is critically important, and we need to build it. It's absent. I'm really supportive of the longer-term grant making because it has been a problem. I know it's a problem in the foundation. We live for 3 months or so, and the whole issue of operational versus project is a real problem. So that has to change, and so I would support that. But I think coming on to the focus areas you referred to earlier, I absolutely support the area of youth development and youth skilling and preparation of our young people for leadership. But there are two things I worry about in Africa that we don't talk about sufficiently. One, investment in universities, and two, support for innovation. No economy that is successful has succeeded without high-level skills, research, science, and innovation. And this is a negative on the African continent. Our governments think universities are enemies because there are bright people in them. But we should be building our intellectual resources to contribute to change. And so I think youth, higher education, science and innovation are critical for Africa. If we don't have those, I don't really see us making that leap that is so critically important. I agree with what has been said, but I would like to see that shift. And then the notion of an ecosystem is vital as well. If you have money, but you don't have institutional capacity, or you lack certain skills, you're in trouble. That money becomes a problem.
Yes.
It doesn't resolve issues of development. So you've got to ensure that alongside providing the grants for the very ambitious non-governmental organization or NPO, that you have someone who knows how to manage money, that you have a good program manager, that you have the skills that are necessary to ensure that the resources you utilize are actually put to good effect. Finally, we also need some agreement about a proportion of the resources, it being agreed that they should be devoted toward creating an endowment, so that at some point we do have self-sufficiency. We must also encourage our organizations that receive such support to also look at income-generating aspects of their work. Many of the NGOs have become real experts, either in education or in offering social justice through legal support. You can begin to generate resources that build that endowment and ensure that when a Mr. Trump comes along and pulls the rug from under your feet, you are able to stand up quickly. But if you're just rely on philanthropic organizations, I think you're making the wrong bet.
Thank you. I think this takes us to a point, and I think the Center for African Philanthropy would be wanting me to say this, about the role of African philanthropy and African agency, and the sense that for decades we've always relied on money from US foundations, from Europe, from the development sector. And there is money on the continent. We are learning more and more through the wonderful research that CAPSI is doing. But we have local foundations. We have a healthy local foundation ecosystem. And how do we tap into that? And Binaifer, if I could ask you, how does Open Society think about partnerships with local philanthropy, local private sector? Often we think philanthropy is going to solve all the problems. How does philanthropy think about working with other local foundations, the private sector, governments, universities on the African continent?
Want to go first?
I would support that hugely. And so clearly we would welcome such an aspect, a component in the programs of the foundation. Because I think we do have corporate social investment in South Africa. It's a very big field, but it doesn't sufficiently go toward these inadequacies that we're referring to. And I think it could do much more in building essentially almost an entrepreneurship base of social responsibility, which you see in many very highly developed countries. You know, if you drive down a road in a city in Europe, you see an organization for law, an organization for women's business, and all of them began as small non-governmental organizations, but grew into able organizations that could offer real support and services. So we need to not think of philanthropic work as a temporary kind of charity initiatives. It may begin as such, but it has the potential to grow into something quite complex and impactful. And I think there could be an opportunity for the foundation to help our organization understand what a future might look like.
Perhaps I can
come in, and then I'm going to come to you,
I was just going to say, on local philanthropy, I mean, I think that there's not been as much of that kind of partnership developed. And I think that again, even local philanthropies tend to come to the bigger global philanthropies for funds. And so again, we need to think about the model. I also think that organizing around the nonprofit sector has been very narrow. It's been around the non-governmental organization registration. And this has created its own kind of cycle where people register NGOs, or if they're not able to register NGOs or receive foreign funds, they're not thinking out of the box in terms of other ways of organizing. And actually, Brian and I were talking about this yesterday. In Kenya, and I'm sure it's here, we have what are called SACCOs. People put their money in. They can pull out whatever, they are able then to pull more money than they actually put in. And this becomes actually a way of enriching the community in ways that are not charity, because they get the first SACCO amount, but then they go and buy a car, or they go and do something else. And then it builds on itself. Labor union organizing, again, it's not an NGO. We have to think beyond the registered NGO. The reason why the NGO is the recipient of foreign funds is because the registration laws in the source country require that kind of registration, not because we organize that way. And then it feeds itself. But in places where foreign funding is not taken, and you see a lot of Indian organizations who don't receive foreign funds, they are remarkably innovative and interesting in the way the Indian grant recipient sector has dealt with these things. I think, again, we haven't done the thinking.
Yeah. Thank you. Machel.
No, I was going to say it is, I mean, the issue is mostly with us as local organizations. We have not been exploring enough relationships with private sector, for instance. I mean, if you ask how much, in this country particularly, how much MTN or even Vodacom are giving to education. And what they do, it's because they made a decision and they are trying to partner, but other organizations are not, tapping into that to get part of those resources so that they will do what we are saying, innovation, etc., etc. So if Vodacom and MTN can give, why other big companies are not able to give? It's because we didn't engage them enough and build that relationship, which we can say we are going to work together for 5 years. At least my organization has succeeded to have 5 years, not 10 years, with with the sum of the companies. And the reason why they were responsive is because part of our program is developing young entrepreneurs. So they see directly the value of giving money to us. But if you go to our local organizations, companies, and they talk of programs of protecting those who are being persecuted, etc., they will not come in. So there is a problem of educating our corporations, large corporations, to understand that they shouldn't be only giving for the immediate, which they can see is going to favor them. They have also to give to societal issues. We had a problem, for instance, with nutrition. Just to convince companies that nutrition is a basic issue for a child to succeed in life. No, they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't take it. So I think it's a process in which we have to go beyond the immediate, as I'm saying, because for that they do respond. But for them to take up, societal issues which are vital, which are investment, in fact, in a better society, like the examples I was giving. There's a lot to be done in that aspect, but it's our issue, and we have to take responsibility that we need to continue to.
I know we're getting to time, so I wanted to pivot us a bit in terms of, all of you have been sharing such valuable insights and useful information, but messages that you think, or message for African civil society in this moment, for governments in this moment, for philanthropy in this moment. And I think I want to emphasize this whole of society approach. We haven't spoken about government enough, and we often, and even in civil society, we don't take collective approaches. It's like, I'm going to solve the problems of the world. Here's my proposal. There's not a collective approach to a whole of society approach to solve some of these problems. What advice do you have for us as we move forward into this next period? The crisis has brought on something, and a crisis is a moment for us to reflect and think differently. Advice for civil society, for government, for the private sector, for our audience here. I'm going to go down and hear from all of you.
Decide going that way?
Who wants to go first?
I can go because
Machel.
I can go because I think Naledi and they will say it in a refined way. So let me start. Let me start. I know this might sound controversial, but I think it's good that Trump came and say, it's enough. Take care of yourself. And then the Europeans, also because they have their own problems, they told us they're going to cut aid. It is good. It is a shock. It is a shock. But I think it's time for us to be told that we have to take care of ourselves. You put it right.
Yeah.
And So instead of sitting here and complaining, I know the immediate effect, the problem we have is that some people, some thousands, will get unemployed immediately. But then they have to go to to what you call civil servants. Because some of the best minds, they left the civil service to go to NGOs because NGO, they pay better. But Trump has said also, no, I don't want you to come. So we will have to stay here at home. And what is important? What is important is it is time for Africans to believe that they have the potential. Perhaps they do not have the resources, but they have the potential to resolve their problems. They don't need Trump. They don't need the Europeans. We don't need them. So I think I'm talking to my children here and telling them, you know, I'm in English, I don't know. You know how to win off? To win off? Yeah. So we are being
Weaned off.
yeah. And it's to say we have to stand on our own feet, and we have also to use our mind, and we have the resources and we have the potential to resolve our problems. So that is good. The message is good. The other message I would like to now to give to our partners who are philanthropists, really be serious. And, no, I haven't said yet, be serious on what? Please do be serious in helping to civil society organizations to build their own institutions, to be strong as institutions. Because otherwise, they will be vulnerable to these shocks. No, if they have a strong institution, they will be able now to use better their brilliant minds and to tap into the potentials which exist there to exercise and to do the activities. So, because I don't want to be long, one is for us, another one is for our partners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, many colleagues and comrades from Palestine ask us about the struggle, and I always tell them in difficult moments, what we did is say, what are the balance of forces? And has tactic become strategy? And should we refine strategy and improve on our tactics? So the point I'm making is that I think organizations confronting a really difficult moment need to regroup together, to think together, and to plan together. It's a different world. And I think to look at how we can marshal local resources in support. Now, not all of us on the continent have the ability to give. But if we are measured and thoughtful in what we seek, I believe we could generate sufficient to assist many organizations to survive, if we are reasonable in what we put before our people. Muslim community does very well in terms of charity and the mandate that we have, that we should always practice charity. We should talk to our society and say, if all of us could just commit, even if it be to a modest 50 Rand a year, a number of organizations would be able to survive. And that 50 Rand could grow. But then you are building your own organizations, you're relying on local capacity, and you are showing that you deserve to survive. There will be some who might not, that might not succeed, but I believe we could be surprised at the results. Also, part of our problem is we have a propensity of creating too many organizations. And so we need to look at coherence, reorganizing, and actually coming together to form subdivisions or some form of conglomerate with smaller elements, you know, and looking at how the resources we have could more efficiently address our needs. This is a moment for real thought, and I think I come back to the point. One of the things that we do on our continent, and even here in our country, we neglect our intellectual resources. We have them, and we should make far better use of them than we are doing at this point. I want to close by saying that, you know, sometimes one up to our government. When years ago the government took a decision to begin investing more and more health funding into the purchase of ARVs, at the time I thought the minister was totally crazy. But this year, I've appreciated that decision.
Yeah.
So it's vital that we rely on ourselves.
So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit in my closing. You know, we live on a planet where there's enough for everybody if it was distributed correctly. And so it's not an issue that there's not enough to go around. There's enough to go around. It's just not, it's not being captured and distributed in the way it should. What we need right now in philanthropy, in government, in corporations, we need people who have a moral imagination to envision a world that benefits from a shared humanity. It's not a complex thing to do that. But what it means is that each of us, wherever we sit, and you don't have to sit in a philanthropy, it means that every decision you make, you think about what it is to be a global citizen, not to just be a kind of parochial person in a single place. And I actually think South Africa is demonstrating that global citizenship right now. I actually think that when South Africa stood up to go to the ICJ on behalf of people in Gaza, my goodness, you spoke for the world. And that is, yeah. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
That is what I mean by a shared humanity. It was demonstrated by South Africa. And those are the kinds of actions that if we take, amplified in whatever sphere of influence we have, and it doesn't matter where we sit, each of us together. I see South Africa taking the G20 now. They're going to do great things, and they'll take it from Brazil, and they'll continue that. I see the universities here. I see people with talent, students with incredible talent that are going to carry us into the next century. And so wherever you are, wherever you sit, whatever field you're in, it doesn't matter. What you have to aspire for is the understanding that we are all humans and that we have a shared stake in the future of this planet, and that whatever way you can contribute, please do. You don't have to be in philanthropy, and it's not about money. Thank you.
I want to thank our panelists for ending on a hopeful note. I really think that we needed to hear that. For me, this whole conversation points to the need for solidarity and how we think about solidarity at a very local level between different sectors in society, but also at the transnational and the global level in this moment. And not start with money, but start with solidarity and imagination. So thank you very much for being part of this conversation. I'm going to be handing over to Becky right now.
And we go back and in our seats, right? No.
You have a bit of time.
Do you want to?
Yeah,
do,
if you have a
do
bit
you
of
want us
time.
to do some questions?
Yeah, just a few.
Okay. Great. I've been given permission by my boss to open the floor for some questions. So let me start. I've got Mabatu. I'd love to hear from Mabatu representing local philanthropy. I've got a hand over there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're going to take 4. Becky, until what time do we have?
We have about 15.
15 minutes. Let's take 4 questions. Try to be brief and direct your question to someone on the panel so that we can also get the answers of the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Mabatu Maboya.
Do you want to stand up, Mabatu?
Yes, I will.
Mabatu, speak into the mic, please.
I'll ask the camera to follow me. My name is Mabatu Maboya. I'm from Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation. And we are also members of the Independent Philanthropic Association of South Africa. I'd like to thank you so much for your contributions, and it's great that we are all seeing that this strategic moment should be regarded in terms of strategic philanthropy and us collaborating in pooling resources to respond to these challenges that we are having. However, mine is a comment just to add to say that, and perhaps it's a message to broadly to our governments across the continent, to say that for us to also to be able to unlock strategic philanthropic capital that is local, that is in the continent, we need to look at the infrastructure that supports giving. That will help us so that individual philanthropists can see that it's better to work collectively and contributing to that strategic vision than a dream of saying, I just want to support my school because I went there and I'll look good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama. We go over to that side. Please introduce yourself and then you can
Where is that?
pose your question.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Simon Allison. I am the international editor of The Continent newspaper. Just in the interest of, what we are discussing today in terms of taking sort of greater responsibility and independence for the context we find ourselves in, I just wanted to ask, we keep talking about youth and how we're going to encourage youth to participate in social justice. What is the panel's reaction to what is going on in Mozambique right now? Venancio Mandlane, 2 of his supporters were killed last week. He was tear gassed today. We know the situation, but what is that saying to the youth who are trying to change things? And how do we incorporate that into our sort of sustainable development goals?
We had a question down here, and then we have one over there.
To take a question after I've spoken as a head of school, but I really wanted to understand something from you, Binaifer. Maybe it will be. You said something that you supported core partners only in the global north, and you have never done it in global south. What do you actually mean by a core partner? What is the criteria of a core partner? So that as we leave here, we can understand it and probably think about how to structure.
Yes.
Then we had over there with a white shirt on. Okay, both. We'll take both.
Tutuzilindwandwe, City Coalition for Digital Rights, backed by the European Union. It is quite interesting, heavy at the same time, to actually listen at the police aspect of it, the societal aspect.
Can you
and
speak
the
up a bit?
Can you put the mic?
Actually, if you stand up, we'll be able to hear you, I think, a bit better.
Tutuzilindwandwe, urban planner by profession, City Coalition for Digital Rights, European Union, backed up organization. We pretty much do a lot of data analysis on the unfolding of societal structures in response to political spheres that are happening, and we formulate policies in regulation of issues of cutting off funds. And having listened to the dialogue of how we have short-sighted ourselves in selling our value proposition and how we've always been perceived as the end receivers and the power struggles and the dynamics and all that, my question is pretty much to the minister in terms of the international relations in the scheme of things currently, having identified the ideologies and the shift that we need to move away from being the receiver and being co-partners. So we pretty much coming to a value proposition. I'm glad we're in a business school, and you said we've been bankruptcy in selling our intellectual property, which we could leverage on, and also looking into proactive intervention as to how we as a region tend to respond moving forward. At this point in time, what is happening in terms of the response? Yes, we've got the ideas and we've got the backing of knowing what we need to do, but what is actually in line and what's going to be happening and what should we be looking forward to? Thank you.
Next to you, we had a question, and then I'm going to just turn to our panel. We're going to turn to our panel next.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Yandiswa Kagaza. I'm a development specialist. And my question is to Binaifer. I just wanted to find out, to what degree are you currently considering or already doing it, giving portions of your grants towards endowments, as that is probably the most effective way to enable implementing organizations to be self-sustaining. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to see if we have time for the second round. For now, I'm going to just open up. We had a question around Mozambique, how we're responding to the current situation. We had Mabatu's comment around the infrastructure for local philanthropy. We had a very specific question to you, Binaifer,
Yes.
around the global
Endowments.
south
Yes,
and,
I got it.
and endowments. So
I can come in about Mozambique. When I arrived and Becky was greeting me and says, how are you? I said, I'm fine except what is happening in Mozambique. I don't think I am in a position to come to give you a clear response to what you are asking. What I can say is that what's happening in Mozambique is a tragedy. It's something which I never thought in my life of almost 8 decades that we will end up in that kind of a situation. I never imagined. It is still, for me, it is still like it is a nightmare that I will wake up one day and I say, no, it's not happening. If you like, I can speak to you after this outside. But your question was, what do we do with young people? In Mozambique, as we speak, there are organizations who are trying exactly to work with and for young people. But of course, for the dimension of the crisis, it's not enough. It has not been sufficient to give space for young people, I mean, to get work, to get training, and to be able to start their own business. But more importantly is the changing of the system itself as it is. Because this is what young people want. They want the system to change, but they want also, I mean, these very basic things of having a job, having training, having a future to look up to. So it is just to say, for some of my friends will say, what is happening in Mozambique? And usually I say, I don't want to talk about it because it's too heavy and it's very, very complex, and it's nothing of what I could have expected that it could happen there. But when we leave, after we have finished, if you like, we can talk. We can talk, yeah.
I think that there are many things happening that affect young people that are really terrible. Just 2 days ago, I learned from a colleague at Columbia University, they've suddenly had $400 million withdrawn. What does that say? It means the government wants Columbia University to say what the government wants, and for students not to support struggles elsewhere. This is wrong for higher education to be treated in that way. And it's not just happening at Columbia, it's happening with Edinburgh University in Scotland. Some of it happened here. You can't wear certain colors, and so on. So I think there's a crisis of democracy worldwide, a crisis of freedom of expression that we need to be very concerned about. And part of the response has to be to devote greater efforts to rooting democracy and democratic practices in our societies. Because I think sometimes we're wrong to have the view that opposition is always correct and majority is always wrong. There's a point at which democracy should reign, but there are also electoral institutes, that commissions that do their work very badly. So rooting democracy, building strong democratic institutions, having frameworks of law that advance justice and freedoms are part of the work that I think we need to attend to. And what's interesting is that it's not merely in Africa or the South, it's throughout the world, as we can see today. So we should be worried about the globe and the direction in which it is going. Then on the question that was posed to me, there is a great deal which I could speak to for what we're doing in South Africa, where we are trying to promote greater research and innovation. And we've succeeded in some part due to partnerships with the European Union and various research funding that the EU used to make open and available to other regions of the world. That has supported us in building institutional capacity, particularly in intellectual property registration in our universities, where we used to have a very weak capacity. We now have a much stronger capacity. We also have strengthened our ability to invest in innovation, because part of our problem was that we had researchers doing really good research work, but then there was nobody funding because the ecosystem wasn't there as it is in Finland, Norway, and elsewhere. So some work has been done to build that capacity, and we can see with the performance of institutions such as the CSIR, that there is this capacity increasingly available in our country, but much more needs to happen. I think we've become better at IP management in the sciences. I think less able in the arts and humanities field. We need to build greater ability there. But the relationship between ourselves and the European Union in this area has actually been a very positive one.
So just on youth.
Oh, and I'm no longer a minister.
I think we've talked a lot today about imagination, but we haven't mentioned courage. And I think this work really requires a level of courage and bravery to do it. And we're seeing remarkable courage being demonstrated by young people across the globe. And I think in whatever way we can support that, I think it's important. The suppression of freedom of speech on Columbia's campus was followed by the arrest of a student who had been involved in the demonstrations, who had residency in the US, who was taken by immigration officials and put in detention. And it's being challenged now. So as somebody wrote, Colombia now has a political prisoner in the United States who's been essentially abducted and put in detention. So I think these are serious risks that people are taking to speak on principle. So to the more mundane, how do you become a core partner? Core partner, basically what we're trying to do is move away from sort of standing programs that go in perpetuity, regardless of the changes around and that kind of stick in one sort of lane. What we're realizing is movements are organizing differently. They're organizing in intersectional ways. It's not enough to just fund the women's movement, or it's not enough to just fund the LGBT movement. We need a mix that allows for a weaving together of something global. And this set of partners, what we are looking at is, if you remove this group out of the ecosystem, or this movement, or whatever way it's organizing, are we going to lose something, either in a country or a region or globally? Is it filling some very important role that we would like to see, as opposed to having to build a program around it? And so it's a variety of different groups. And again, we're experimenting with this. This is something new for us. And the idea is to give these organizations exactly what you're saying, is a long runway, so that they can actually think about their work in ways that are not connected to performing to something, but actually that we just support them. And there's a team that looks at that, and then they coordinate with our teams that are working around programmatic goals, who are working in regions, etc. What was there's one other question. What was your question again?
How do you move from NGO to sustainable?
Endowments.
Oh, endowments. Endowments generally, philanthropies don't like, and we are no exception. Although recently we spun out our Haiti Foundation with $20 million, and they got matching funds from Kellogg, which will now become their endowment. But that is the exception, not the rule. We used to have a lot of what we called national foundations, organizations that had local boards with local staff. We had it here in South Africa as well. And some of those we basically spun out with big amounts of funds, not necessarily endowment as such, but a big amount for them now to decide how they wanted to proceed. And it's interesting because we've spun out probably about 16, 17 of them over the years, and they pretty much all have survived. We didn't give them an endowment, but we made sure we gave them a generous kind of parting gift. And they've also found other donors, and most of them are in Eastern Europe, which is where we began. But Haiti, we just was the most recent one we did it. But generally, I find that philanthropies are loath to give endowments, in part because to get a really workable endowment, you have to give a very large amount. And so it's really, you have to really be convinced that this is the place that we want to invest a huge amount of money in. And universities especially, to invest in endowment in a university, I mean, the kinds of funds you need are so huge. So going back to the idea of higher education, it's just not possible. The Japanese for a while were funding universities with endowments, and then they stopped. But it does require a donor that's just committed to that.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating, and thank you for answering questions. I'm going to hand over to Becky and Imran right now. Thank you.
I think it's just sit there so
Okay.
that we can close. All right, thank you so much for the lively panel. We were also following what's going on online. Very fascinating comments that we would have loved to share. We had about 360 people online, all following and commenting. I know we have some students here who are doing our courses on philanthropy. So we have a course called African Gifting and another course called Resourcing African Philanthropy. If this was not your lecture today, then I don't know what else you want. In fact, we are going to actually use some of these excerpts for classes, because we actually invest in having visitors, but also guest lecturers. Because at times what we teach here is more theoretical, and yet there's stuff that is happening on the ground. And so we want to make sure that the idea of prior academics is really enshrined, especially here at the business school, where things need to be done and not just theorized. Now, I want to introduce Professor Imran Valodia, who is a professor of economics. He's also a pro-vice chancellor, climate change, sustainability, and inequality. He is the director of the Southern Center for Inequality Studies. But most importantly for me, he is the chair of the CAPSI Advisory Board. So, Prof, if you could come and give us your vote of thanks.
So my job's kind of really to say the thank yous, but I can't resist the temptation to just share two reflections, which I think are kind of important points to make. So in 2014, in consultation with a number of you who are here from the philanthropy sector, we debated kind of setting up an institution at WITS that would do research on and train people, kind of especially at the postgraduate level in the field of philanthropy. And after all of those consultations, there were two kind of strategic decisions we took, largely on the kind of advice that we got from you. The first was that we felt if we were to set up such a center, that we should really kind of have it kind of inside a business school. And I think it was important for us to do that because we wanted to link the kind of issue of the production of wealth, which is traditionally what business schools do, with kind of questions of kind of solidarity, questions of kind of equality, and kind of how we use wealth, not just to create much more wealth, but to actually change patterns of wealth. And it was with that in mind that we took the decision to have CAPSI based here at the business school. The second strategic objective we had was to really kind of promote the idea of kind of African philanthropy, because I think we wanted to shift the narrative that all Africa does is to receive kind of philanthropy, and that all our role is kind of in the world is to have the begging bowls out, so that those in the north can help us. We wanted at that time to really start to challenge that idea and to have philanthropy globally that was accountable to kind of questions of kind of inequality globally, but also to kind of promote the idea that kind of Africa had to lead in much of this thinking. And I think all of our panelists have kind of really reflected on that. And as the chair of the board of CAPSI, it kind of gives me immense pleasure that CAPSI is able to host events like this. And I want to acknowledge the leadership of Professor Moyo in doing that. The second kind of reflection is kind of something else that we discussed a lot, was this kind of question of how we make sense of the moment that we're in. And I think all of our panelists shared their thoughts with us on that. the kind of takeaway for me is that I think if we look back in our history and we kind of really look at all of the fantastic work that's been done in kind of academic research, also kind of outside of universities, kind of on the rise and fall of kind of hegemons that kind of rule the world, that it's kind of often the case that those hegemonic powers that kind of abuse their power start to become a lot more desperate and start to become a lot more irrational as the kind of unequal power that they wield starts to wane. And I think for me, all of our panelists reflected on that. I think the kind of other side of that equation is that while the next few years are not going to be easy, I think we also kind of need to see it as a huge opportunity for us to define a world that is not going to be a world about exploitation, is not going to be a world about abuse of power, is not going to be a world about larger and larger concentrations of wealth, but is going to be a world that we heard so much about today, kind of a world about kind of a world about rebalancing power, a world about solidarity, and a world where kind of our role as Africans is going to be central to how that kind of how that world gets shaped. So I think while it's tough when we wake up each day and you see the next saga of the abuse of power, that all kind of four of our panelists really showed us a way forward and really gave us a sense of hope about the future and kind of really highlighted all of our responsibilities in kind of ensuring that we have a fairer and a much more equitable world. So thank you to all four of you for that. Let me now just move on to a few thank yous. So I want to start with the leadership of the university, but I want to first highlight those who manage the governance of our university. So many of our institutions battle with kind of having the right governance systems in place. And I think every day we see this playing out across the world. So we've had the kind of chair of our council, our chancellors here. In the room, there's a number of you that play kind of really, really important roles in various advisory roles that you play to support the work that we do at Wits University. And I think the work that you do is so kind of important for kind of allowing us to do the academic work that we do. But often your roles go unnoticed because the governance stuff isn't the fancy stuff. It's not the sexy stuff to be doing, but none of everything that we do would happen without all of the governance. So kind of thank you so much to all of the governance. I want to thank the senior executive team of the university, kind of from the Vice Chancellor, the DVCs, our kind of our CFO, kind of others that have supported this event and support all of the fantastic work that we do at Wits University. I'd like to thank the leadership of the faculty, the dean, the kind of head of school, the kind of exco of the faculty, various structures in the Wits Business School for kind of all of the support that you provide to CAPSI. So we're extremely proud of the business school. So thank you so much for your support. So as the chair of the CAPSI board, I see members of the advisory board in the room. Thank you so much for all of your support that you provide to CAPSI. I want to thank all of the staff of CAPSI and all of the WBS staff who've made this kind of event today such a success. If I go through all of the names, we'll be here for a long time, and inevitably I'm going to forget someone. So you know who you are. None of this would happen without you, and we're really, really grateful for all of the fantastic work that you I'd like to thank the president of OSF, Binaifer. It's been a fantastic pleasure for us to have you here at Wits, and to the whole of the OSF team that are here. It's really fantastic to kind of have you kind of engaging on these important issues in an open and transparent way. I think we all know the fantastic role that OSF has played in the South African transition, and we're really, really grateful to you all for that. Kind of thank you so much to you, Nicolette, for chairing the session today, and for all of the support that you provide to CAPSI, and also to Wits University, and I think to the whole of South African civil society. Your contribution has been outstanding. So thank you so much for that. So it's kind of not it's not every day that you can have a powerhouse panel like we've had today. And to have two kind of outstanding members of the African kind of leadership in one room on the same day, in one panel at the same time, is really kind of something special. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I'd like to close then by kind of thanking you all for being here. There's 300 of us online, and kind of this room is full. There's a room outside, kind of upstairs as well. I think it's been a fantastic event, and we're really, really grateful to all of you for attending. So I think it would be kind of appropriate for me to close then with a quote from kind of from the first president of democratic South Africa, and since Machel's here with us, kind of I think for us to hear to kind of hear the words of President Mandela is really an appropriate way for us to close. So he said, kind of as long as poverty and inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. So with that, let me close the event. Thank you, everyone. I'll pass it back to Betty.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.